Hello, everybody, and welcome to your live event. My name is Eric Wynkoop, and I want to, invite you to my open office hours today here at Rouxbe. And this is your chance to ask questions related to food and cooking, and I'll do my best to share my experience with you. And we're going to go ahead and jump into things pretty quickly here, but I'd like to cover a couple of things as usual. And the first one is if you would like to participate more directly in today's event, you're welcome to do so by entering a question or a comment in the dialog box in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. And then item number two is if you look on the right-hand side of your screen, you'll see a number of questions that have already been submitted to the queue, and you'll see a heart-shaped icon in each of those boxes in the upper right-hand corner. And if you'd like me to answer that question sooner than later, go ahead and click on the heart-shaped icon. And that does it for the housekeeping. Let's go ahead and jump into today's questions. And the first one is from Robert, who says, upon successfully completing the Rouxbe Professional Cook course, which paths are laid open for a graduate? Does Rouxbe have a network accessible for graduates to support these paths? And let me answer the second part first. And I'll say very quickly that Rouxbe does not have a formal network set up, but there have certainly been situations where, just based upon our individual contacts, we have been successful in introducing a graduate of Rouxbe to, a potential internship site or even an employer. And to the first part of your question, Robert, what paths are laid open for a graduate? So graduates of our pro courses and arguably some of our other courses as well have a lot of possible options ahead of them, depending on what sort of interests or skill sets you bring into your big picture, and what your interests are moving forward as they relate to food. And I'll share some of the things that our graduates have done and are currently doing around the world. And this is probably not an exhaustive list, but they include entrepreneurship, where folks have opened a cafe or another type of restaurant. We have graduates that are in the world of catering of one sort or another, meaning that you can choose an audience. It might be young people, in other words, children's events or some other demographic that you're focusing on. Also it can vary based upon the type of food that you might offer. There are folks that focus on desserts, and there are others that focus on more casual, cocktail party style events. And, folks that might even focus on the full meal deal, a multi-course meal, taking care of all of the logistics in terms of seats and decorative flowers and hiring musicians and that sort of thing. And so those are just some different ways that catering can unfold. We have students that have blogs and have some presence on the internet, writing and doing food photography. There are folks that are associated with more traditional publication of books or contributing articles to magazines, whether in print or online. Those are a few things that come to mind. Again, I'm sure there are a lot of other things that folks are doing, but the beautiful thing is that food can really intersect with just about anything. And I think if you name a hobby or an interest, we can probably come up with a way that food is related or intersects with that, and therefore an avenue that you might pursue. Okay. So, in that sense, those are the myriad opportunities that are laid open for a graduate of, I think, especially one of our pro courses. And yeah, I hope that you'll give this a try. One thing that I always mention, especially for folks that, or maybe I should say specifically for folks that have an entrepreneurial idea, and that is to take a look at developing a business plan, which can really uh, provide some guardrails, so to speak, to the path that you might choose if it revolves around business. All right, thank you. Okay, looks like we've got the next question from Bonnie, who says, "What's the best kind of cutting board?" Well, I'll tell you what kind of cutting boards generally I like. Whether they're best or not, I think is maybe open to one's opinion. But I lean toward natural fiber cutting boards, and woods, different types of wood are available, whether it's, maple or mahogany or something else. Bamboo is a popular material. And, uh, you know, I, I used plastic boards for many, many years, both at home and also, in professional kitchens. And that's still the norm. But, I'm kind of steering away from the microplastics. In some cases, they're not so micro. When you're chopping away on a plastic cutting board, you can sometimes see the pieces of plastic come up. And again, just moving away from that scenario, I now lean more strongly toward natural fiber materials. Again, bamboo and trees of many sorts. And beyond that, there are different ways to construct a cutting board. And I would recommend that you take a look online at some of the discussions to see what might best fit your scenario or what it is that you're after. Okay, and that will probably round out the topic for you. Okay, now one thing that I'll add is that the types of cutting boards that I avoid are those that are particularly hard. And glass, is one example. There are probably some other materials out there that are pretty hard, and they have a tendency to dull the knife faster than a little more forgiving natural fiber. So do keep that in mind as you think about the material of the cutting board. And then, as I mentioned regarding the construction design, take a look online. And oh yeah, I'll add one more thing, and that is regarding the size of the cutting board. Now at home, I have access to a few different sizes, ranging from something pretty darn small to what is 12 by 18, and then probably something even bigger than that, 18 by 24 or so. Keep in mind that the larger your cutting board, the more work you're able to do faster, because you've got more real estate to work on, and to stage things and to move things around, and you're able to use a larger knife as well. And of course, think about how much space you have. So, the size of the cutting board is another consideration. If you're cooking for yourself or maybe a couple of people, maybe a smaller cutting board, maybe 12 by 18 is adequate. Maybe even something smaller than that. If it's going to be a group of 5 or 6 regularly, maybe you throw parties a lot, then perhaps 18 by 24 is going to better suit you. But anyway, a few things to think about. Thank you. And the next question is from Shireen, who writes, how do you best dice an onion? Well, Shireen, so this is a bigger question. And I'm going to start my answer by saying, take a look at one of our courses. In our courses, we have very nice, clear, easy to follow, logical, and safe video lessons that'll walk you through the cutting of onions and a number of other things based upon size and shape. Okay. But very quickly, when it comes to an onion, there are a couple of approaches. I mean, one, uh, you got to peel it, you got to cut it in half, and keep the root end intact because that holds all the layers together. And then you can move into cutting it into whatever orientation or size that you'd like. So, for example, if you're slicing it, you're going to hold the onion, you're going to tuck your knuckles. So your knife is going to rest upon your knuckle. You don't want fingertips sticking out because of the risk of cutting fingertips. So this is an important safety point. Tuck your fingertips, the knife goes up against the knuckle, and you can just make slices. If you want a dice, then you've got the root end out here. You're going to make slices this way first, and then you'll rotate your blade 90 degrees and then finish the cuts in this other orientation. And that'll result in the dice cut. Okay. So in a nutshell, that's the process. But again, I encourage you to take a look at one of our courses that will give you a lot more information on the subject of cutting. Thank you. And the next question is also from Shireen. And Shireen says, it takes me a long time to cut up food. How can I shorten the time it takes? So there are two factors to knife skill development and proficiency on the knife. And one is the technique. And then number two is practice. And it's during practice that you develop your confidence relative to the technique, and you also add speed to your work. Okay, so work, keep those two things in mind in that sequence. Focus very slowly and methodically with safety in mind on the technique development and understanding, and then add speed to your work, and then your overall experience will be much more efficient. But practice, practice, practice makes us better at whatever we do. Thank you. Okay, next up, we've got MC who says, pulling from your broad international culinary background, what are a couple of your favorite dishes? Well, let's see here. I like tacos. How's that as a broad category? And I like them because it's a broad category. They're so versatile. And if you're going to make tacos, make your tortillas. Buy some masa harina and have that on hand. Practice, and you'll enjoy the aroma and flavor of fresh tortillas. And it's pretty quick once you have a little bit of practice under your belt. And then what goes into that flatbread is really up to you. And it can accommodate special ingredients, or it can accommodate leftovers just as deliciously. And that's, one thing that I really like about tacos. In the world of food, condiments often make the dish. And in this case, it's going to be salsa of some sort. And again, you can, work on very quick salsa fresca, with tomatoes and onions and lime juice and cilantro and a little bit of salt, and you're ready to go. Or it could be something a little bit more involved where you're using dried chilies and you're toasting them. You've got some tomatoes and some onion and garlic that you also will roast, and that'll go into the chilies will be soaked in hot water. All of this will be blended You add perhaps a touch of cumin and a splash of apple cider vinegar. Adjust the seasoning with salt, and as needed, a little bit of sugar or some other sweetener, and you'll have yourself a nice salsa roja to go with your tacos. And so that's one item that comes to mind. Let's see, last night I made a green pozole that was all plant-based. And so the base was a salsa verde, so based on tomatillos. And so you can make that, and you can have that in the freezer and use it on your tacos or do other things. In this case, I made pozole. I added mushrooms and then also garbanzo beans. And that came together very, very nicely. Last night we had it with some tortilla chips, tostadas make a nice accompaniment, as well as fresh tortillas. So those are a couple of things that come to mind, from the world of food. I'm a big fan of Mexican cuisine, and those are a couple of super easy and flavorful dishes. Again, if you make these salsas, maybe not salsa fresca, right, but salsa verde, also the salsa roja ahead of time, have a stash in the freezer, then a number of things can very easily come together, okay, with those as a base. Thank you. And next up from Melissa, what are a couple of your favorite summer dishes to serve? Let's see here. Well, if I'm going to include, something like cheese, then, a caprese or caprese inspired salad, is very nice. And it's, I think, made even maybe more meaningful or even more delicious sometimes if you have a garden that you can draw from. And when I say garden, I don't mean anything fancy, right? It could be pots on the balcony. It could be a single, a moderate raised bed, or, something much more involved. And fresh tomatoes, and those come from the farmer's market as well, if that's your best option. And some fresh mozzarella, wherever you want to source that, and basil. Just some fresh basil. Sometimes I'll mix it up by using Thai basil, and that adds a little different twist or edge to the salad. And then, you can dress it up however you want. Like I mentioned, condiments, right, often make the dish. And you can, use a balsamic vinegar of your choice. Maybe it's a balsamic glaze, whether you buy it or make it, right, is up to you. And, you might even choose something else, as a condiment to dress up a salad like that. Okay. In terms of other summer things to make, let's see, something like a salad, whatever that might look like, could be at the table along with any other hot dish, right, in the summertime. And let's see, I mean, frankly, I'll make dal bhat from time to time here at home. And this is reaching into the Indian recipe book. And, dal bhat is a staple food in India and other parts of South Asia, where folks might eat it every day or nearly every day. I enjoy it whenever I eat it, although it's not every day. But that's one of those things that I enjoy. When it comes to the grain accompanying that, it's not always white rice, right? We think about Indian food equals basmati rice. It can be something else. I've got in the inventory here some whole grains of oats, and we've got some spelt and some wheat. We got some brown rice, and then there's quinoa and millet that come to mind. And sometimes it's going to be one of those grains, and a lot of times I'll blend grains. For example, especially if I'm going to make white rice, I will add something else to it, and I like to add usually quinoa, or millet. Millet gets to be very, very wet and dense. So if you want to maintain the more typical texture of the white rice that you're preparing, then quinoa is a nice addition. Just adjust the water based upon the quantity of quinoa that you add. I might add the equivalent of 20% or 25% of the white rice, in the additional quinoa. And that adds a nice hit of some nutrients and visual interest and a different aroma and a different flavor, texture on the palate. And so it's a really fun way to just add some variety right to the table. So again, it could be something as simple as that. That's accompanied with a nice salad, right, as I mentioned. And experiment with the dressings, whether it's an oil-free dressing, examples of which we have in our courses. We have a subset of possibilities. Once you get those, understood and practiced, then you can start to alter them and make your own variations. Thank you. Okay, let's see. Next up, we got a question from Gillian, who says, oil and fats add a lot of flavor to dishes. What are strategies to replace them? I cook West African dishes at times, and they typically call for red palm oil, which has a very distinct flavor. Any suggestions on how to get close to that flavor? Offhand, without experimenting, I don't have any suggestions on how to replicate the red palm oil. And this gives me a great opportunity to take a little tangent, and then I'll come back into addressing your question straight on here, Gillian. But that is to say that when we make a change to a recipe or, the way we cook more generally, such as omitting added oil, let's say, please expect a different result. Sometimes we can get something close, but it probably isn't going to be the same even when it's close. And sometimes it can be pretty darn tasty, but it'll be really different from the original. And it's important that we give ourselves an opportunity to make the adjustment to enjoy the new version of the food, right? The dish or our overarching diet. And as I like to say, these sort of changes are 90% mental. Making the change or doing the work is really pretty easy once we get past the barriers that we create. And of course, aside from allergies or some of these acute issues that might be associated with an ingredient change, most of it is really just a mental hurdle that we need to get past. And, in the case of making a change that is to be a more healthful change, right, in our diet, and we start to move away from pork, right, or cheese or red palm oil, it is reasonable to expect that we might never taste foods that are really close to those flavors ever again, if that's the path that we're going to go down. So also understand that there are so many delicious replacements for each of those ingredients in all of those preparations that are made from those ingredients, but we have to allow ourselves the opportunity to find the enjoyment. And part of that is to also understand that when we make a change, right, we omit something or we swap it out for something else, very often what we do is we think about what's not there. And if we think about what we don't have, we will forever be disappointed, okay, because that reality won't change if that's what we focus on. On the other hand, if we focus on what we do have, we focus on what is presented to us in this new preparation, we can find the joy and all of the benefits, right, that come along with that new preparation. It can take some time, sometimes more time, for some people, but we can all make that change. All right, so do keep that in mind. All right, so back to Gillian's question here about fat. How do you develop flavors? So again, I'm going to say that in our courses we have a much broader and deeper discussion on flavor development, because really that's fundamental to cooking. And omitting oil is one of those things, but there are so many other places and instances where we need to think about flavor development. And it's layering of ingredients and applying heat in certain ways and combining ingredients to create certain results. So when we take oil out of the equation, whether oil for cooking creates a product that is it's flavorful, it looks good, it smells good, and I don't know how you replicate that when you don't have oil. Okay, but we can certainly develop browning or caramelization. We can add acidity. We can use salt judiciously. We can add fresh herbs and spices and other aromatics, whether it's garlic or green onions, or other ingredients that provide a lot of interest to foods, and they can help take our attention and shift it now away from that lack of oil, right? What we don't have, to all these beautiful aromas and flavors and textures and visual interests that we do have, from these changes that we've made. Okay, and so those are the initial go-to categories that I would recommend that you consider. And of course, there are condiments. If you have some favorites that you might draw upon, consider using those and see, again, how you can bring some interest to what it is that you're making in the absence of whatever ingredient you're pulling out of your cooking, the red palm oil in this case. Thank you. All right, next up, we have a question from Melissa, who says, what main dish or main item do you like to take for a picnic or car travel? Okay. One thing that we do, and this is an Indian thing, okay, as far as my experience goes. And these are going to be what are often called chutney sandwiches. And you're going to make a green chutney based on coconut and cilantro, and there's a little green chili and some other things that go in there. And you'll simmer potatoes, and you'll slice cucumbers and tomatoes and onions. You'll have some fresh cilantro. A lot of folks will bring boiled eggs that are sliced, and there'll be some other seasonings or condiments that might be a part of this spread as well. But all these components will be packaged separately, and then you've got your favorite bread, and then you can assemble these really tasty sandwiches wherever you are, right? From the boot of your car, or a proper picnic with a blanket spread out on the lawn. So that is one thing that we will do for sure every summer. But other than that, I like to travel with some sort of a thermos or a cooler of some sort, which really expands the possibilities. Okay, so you can start to take things like a potato salad or ice cream, or you name it, if they're packaged appropriately, so that you can extend the shelf life on these things. And if you get an insulated thermos, and we've got a few of these stainless steel double walled, right, insulated thermoses. They come in, we have them in different sizes, and they will hold something like ice cream or nice cream for several hours, all right, until you finally get hungry in the middle of the afternoon, and you can pull this out on the beach and enjoy a pretty memorable meal. Okay. So, anyway, those are a couple of ideas. So part of it is going to be food, but part of it is going to be the tools and equipment that you have that make certain foods possible, right, in this context of travel and picnics. So, Melissa, I hope you'll keep all of this in mind and just give some things a try in addition to what I mentioned. Thank you. Okay, next up, we've got a question from Denise, who says, what was your family's favorite Japanese dish when your children were small? Wow, these are going to be some simple and I'll say fairly common, right, home style dishes. Fried rice, comes to mind. We think about often we think about Chinese restaurant, right? When we think of fried rice, and in fact, in Japan, or in the context of Japanese cooking, fried rice does come from this lineage of Chinese cooking that made its way to Japan. There are that's a whole genre of cooking within Japanese cooking. Okay. A Japanese style Chinese cuisine. And so anyway, fried rice appears, very commonly. You've got, for those meat eaters out there, there's potatoes that are simmered with thinly sliced meat. And typically in a Japanese context, it's beef, but it could be something else. It's generally called nikujaga. So niku means meat, and jaga is short for jagaimo, which means potato. And so that's a common dish that comes up, in home cooking. And as I've mentioned in other programs, that our go-to breakfast here is going to be miso soup. And that was true this morning as well. And let's see. In the summertime, tofu comes to mind a lot, just because it's a great source of macronutrients and other things. But in the summertime, there's a very simple preparation called I think it's called hiyayakko, and it's soft tofu that you put out just in a block form, and you'll grate some ginger and put a nub of that on top, and drizzle some soy sauce over that to the extent that you want. And then you eat that. It's chilled, and it's refreshing, gives you a good source of all of the protein building amino acids that soybeans offer. And so anyway, those are just a few quick things that come to mind. And I'm sure if I sat down with you, Denise, we can brainstorm and come up with several other things. But I'll leave it at that. Thank you. Okay, Maria, welcome back. Nice to see you. And Maria says, when boiling pasta sometimes run out of sea salt, what's the next best besides sea salt to use for pasta? We always have some pink salt, the Indian style. It's not, I shouldn't say Indian style, because most of it around here comes from Pakistan, but the South Asian Himalayan pink salt, and we'll use that as well. Probably in equal proportion to any sea salt that we have. So that's the first thing that comes to mind, and then from there, I'll let you choose the least evil, I guess, of the salts. But sea salts are very flavorful. And for those of you out there that haven't tried sea salt, or maybe are just sea salt curious, I encourage you to try some. They've got flavors that are unique to every region that they come from. they've got so many minerals and things in them that they're just very flavorful. And when you set them side by side to, say, kosher salt, certainly these more run-of-the-mill table salts, you'll immediately recognize the night and day difference in flavor that sea salt provides. And so I hope you'll have some fun with that. But anyway, Maria, I hope that helps. Thank you. All right, we got another question. And this is, what type of non-stick pan is safe to use? Some I hear aren't safe because it gets in your food. So, arguably, I think folks would say, or at least some folks would say, that no non-stick pan is going to be safe. So there's our starting point. Okay, so the question is, what do you want to tolerate? And if the concern is that a nonstick pan may not be good for you and the members of your family, then my recommendation is don't use one. Okay, just eliminate that concern entirely. Otherwise, you might consider using one just once in a while, right? Just minimally. You might just choose a couple of things that are kind of persnickety in the pan that have a tendency to stick, and you'll just use your nonstick pan, exclusively on those few items. In terms of what type of nonstick pan to use, I'll tell you what I do. Okay, this is going to lead to a larger conversation here. I will go down every once in a while to the restaurant supply store just down the street here and pick up something. And we'll have one nonstick pan, something yay big, maybe 7 inches or so, because we don't use it for most of our cooking. And we'll use it until it doesn't have its nonstick qualities, and then we'll throw it out. Or recycle it if that's possible, and then just replace it. So this leads me to share my perspective on nonstick pans, and that is to say that they are disposable items because over time they accumulate micro scratches and they lose their nonstick quality. And therefore, I don't recommend a full set of nonstick pans. Okay. So yeah, hopefully that will answer your questions, Shireen. Okay. And, you just need to think about how much of a concern this is, and if you want to go down that path at all. And if so, what do those stepping stones look like for you? Thank you. Okay. And our final question today is, for your plant-based curriculum, how does it stack up to ICE or Escoffier? Also, do you have classes on dairy subs? So I'm not familiar with what ICE or Escoffier offers, so I'll leave that up to you, okay, to make that comparison. If you go to Rouxbe.com, you can take a look at the syllabus, okay, for our Pro Plant course, for example. And then you can make that comparison. All right. And in terms of dairy substitutes, we do not offer a standalone class, but we do discuss that topic, in our plant-based, our Pro Plant course, for example. Okay. So, hopefully that answers your question. And that brings us to the end of our program today. So I want to thank each of you for your participation. We had a nice selection of questions, and I look forward to seeing you again at my next office hours. And until then, happy cooking. Thank you.